Welcome to the Mentors and Moguls podcast, your source for the inside scoop from some of the world's most accomplished business leaders, athletes, and creatives on how they've achieved success. I'm Heather Stone, a serial entrepreneur with a passion for helping others to overcome challenges and discover their untapped potential. Join me and our guests as we teach you how to break through those barriers on the way to crushing your goals. In each episode, I dive into a new topic with an inspiring mentor to find out exactly how they overcame obstacles, slayed self-doubt, and achieved their goals. Today's expert mentoring session is about to start, so grab your pen and let's dive in. Have you been wondering why all the buzz around CBD? Well, today we are asking an expert to help us separate fact from fiction with this wonder substance. Where does it come from? Is it safe? What exactly is hemp? And how can it help? Meet the founder of Hemp Humanity, Melissa Gibson. Hello, Melissa. It is so great to talk to you again. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Heather. It's wonderful to talk to you.
All right. Are you up there in New York these days?
I am. We are isolating in Woodstock, New York, and it's been a combination of wonderful family time and, of course, lots of anxiety around what's happening.
Understood. Well, let's get into all things CBD here. We have a lot of questions for you, and hopefully you can help us separate fact from fiction.
Happy to.
I'm curious. We met a while back, and I love your background. But for those that are listening that have no idea about your background, my first question to you would be, did you ever think that you would use your degree in agricultural economics from Cornell University to turn it into a career with CBD?
Well, absolutely not. First of all, CBD wasn't on my radar or anyone else's radar at that time. And I was at Cornell to learn about branding and business. And at that university, that major is done in the agriculture and life sciences school. So I didn't really attach myself to the agriculture side of my major. I really focused on the economics. I was, like I said, very into branding, and I saw myself having a future as a marketer with consumer packaged goods companies such as Procter & Gamble and some of the big ones like Colgate-Palmolive. That was all that was really open to me at the time, and that's where I thought I would be. I find myself blessed and happy to be full circle back around and paying more attention to that now that I'm in this industry.
Isn't that ironic? Well, you never know what building blocks you've laid years ago that you might circle back around to help benefit you. So that's a very interesting turn of events for your career. Let's talk a little bit about CBD. There is so much misinformation flying around about CBD these days. It's such a hot topic. Can you give us a little bit of the facts about it? What is CBD? And we'll get into the benefits in a little bit.
Of course. So CBD stands for cannabidiol. Everyone just calls it CBD. And when I first got into this industry and I was talking about it, I think people thought I wasn't saying the alphabet right. They definitely didn't know what I was talking about. But it's just shorthand for cannabidiol, which is one of over 140 cannabinoids that are found in the cannabis plant. And just to set the groundwork, cannabis is the genus species of the plant that includes both marijuana and hemp. The difference between marijuana and hemp is a man-made definition having to do with the percentage of THC in the plant. And that is the molecule that people get that gets people high, that most people associate as being synonymous with marijuana. So when we talk about CBD, it is one of the predominant molecules in the hemp plant that engages with your endocannabinoid system. This is a master modulator of all of the other systems in your body, and it wasn't even really discovered until the early 1990s. So it's new. What we know is new. Endocannabinoid science is its own branch of science at this point. It's fascinating. We're only beginning to scratch the surface. But right now, CBD is the molecule that that everybody is using at the moment to address the benefits that we'll talk about. But that's what CBD is.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that up. So for you, what is the personal attraction? What gives you the draw to dedicate your time and career focus on sustainability and social enterprise, which is CBD at this moment?
I started my company, Hemp Humanity, in 2016. I had spent years in the space of social enterprise and sustainability. That's where that branding and marketing career got me to a number of years ago. Social enterprise is basically the idea that doing business can actually reflect a social consciousness and a concern for the community in which you live. It gives a higher purpose to business, and it is something that appeals to me after years and years of working with typical companies around marketing and branding, the opportunity to apply those skills and my experience into a world that I can really feel good about.
Well, that's an admirable career path, and I love the reasons for you choosing that. So as you know, many millennials these days, that is the number one hot button, social enterprise. They're very socially conscious, which is a terrific thing. I think it's kind of an awakening for this generation. Do you think that this CBD is a viable career path for young women today, tomorrow?
Absolutely. I'm so excited for this next generation coming through, and especially for young women coming through. When I was first starting in business, as I mentioned, in order to get involved with the things I wanted to do, business, branding, marketing, I did need to rely on a corporation in order to manifest those goals. Now with the democratization of technology, social media being one aspect of that, it is possible for you as an individual to take the things you're passionate about and the things for which you have purpose and combine them, if you're lucky, with what you want to do professionally. I think that the doors are flung open. I feel that we've come so far. A young woman starting out in business or starting out in her career can make choices as to where she wants to put her energy, where she's looking to become involved based on, do those companies or those opportunities, are they values aligned with me? I think it's a fabulous time to be starting your career.
Right. Well, I think more and more that there's almost like a gender blindness, if you will. But we're not there yet, but it is evening out. And it seems like your career path particularly would be a little bit more blind than maybe some of the traditional paths as far as a woman applying versus a man applying. It really doesn't matter as long as you have a passion and you have the ability. That's what I see from the outside anyway.
Well, that's astute. And it's like that from the inside as well. Being in this industry, it's essential that and especially being a small business consultant and independent, it's critical that I collaborate with others in the field. And I think women are phenomenal collaborators. And it's manifested itself in this industry with so many organizations, large and small, around supporting women in this industry and being supported by women. You know, the plant is female. The preferred plant is female in this industry. You know, it's the female plants that make the good stuff. And it's a nice way of thinking about the industry in and of itself. Beauty in female collaboration in this industry has a lot to do with the fact that this plant is nurturing and this plant is healing, and women are nurturing and women are healing. And for thousands of years, this plant was used to optimize health, and women tend to be in charge of the health of their family, of themselves. And so there's this great opportunity to bring that feminine wisdom and plant spirituality into what's considered more traditional business. And again, I find it very exciting. There are just so many ways to use what you've got to apply it. Now, if you're just starting out, I'd encourage you to look at all of the incredible and new programs that are springing up in our education system. I just was lucky enough to go back to Cornell in November and speak to a group of students who are in a cannabis club at the business school there. And listening to their projects and listening to the courses that they're taking as part of this groundbreaking cannabis curriculum there, I just thought, wow, you guys are in the right place at the right time to just dream big about what you want to do and actually have it manifest.
Well, that's something that you and I both have in common that we found out. We both have backgrounds with Cornell University. It's a phenomenal university, and I'm excited that you said they've got some new cutting edge courses in the cannabis industry because, like it or not, cannabis is here to stay, and there are many benefits, which we're going to dive into in just a second. So I'd like to shift gears a little bit. I'm all about overcoming obstacles and giving people tools to overcome barriers or obstacles and helping them fight through and giving them tips and comments from people like you that have kind of walked the walk before them. Can you remember a time while you were growing up in this industry over the last 5 years where you had some struggles or some obstacles, not really gender related, but just trying to get a new business off the ground or trying to get a new product off the ground or anything that falls in between? Walk us through maybe a sample of an obstacle and how did you tackle that? How did you overcome and walk through that obstacle to get past it?
I love this kind of question because I benefit from listening to how other people overcome obstacles and turn what might be a struggle into a positive. And that is the example I'd like to bring forward with regard to my business. When I first started in 2016 and really in earnest in 2017, this was before what I mentioned in the beginning of our talk. This was before December 2018, when the plant was considered federally legal. This was a time in a gray area where, based on a 2014 memorandum in the 2014 Farm Act, those of us in the industry were hanging on to this little loophole that discussed the fact that anything less than a plant with or product with less than 0.3% THC is not marijuana and therefore doesn't fall under the drug acts of our time. So because it was such a gray area, and even now, the banking side of this business was lagging. It's still lagging.
Right.
That has everything to do with, federal regulations. So one of the ways that affected me is that, so Hemp Humanity consults and educates and turns people on to what the plant can do for them. And then we curate what I call a consciously curated collection of CBD products that I have thoroughly vetted. And I sell those products as well. And I wasn't able to use a credit card processing system.
Correct.
Right? So when we talk about, everyone likes to talk about scaling their business and how do you make it bigger and better? Well, and we can have a whole other discussion about why that's not necessarily the best way to go about things. But at the time, I certainly wanted to reach a broader audience and be able to sell whether I was present or not, and using an online marketplace, and that just wasn't available to me. And it's not as if I was told it wasn't available, I accepted it, and then I just went about coming up with solutions. It was the kind of thing where you would give something a try, and then you'd get a letter from Stripe or Square or PayPal that they can no longer support what you're doing because it doesn't work out with their own regulations.
Correct.
But what that forced me to do was rethink how I was doing business and really take my business to the people. I had to come up with ways where I was face to face with someone, where I could have a cash transaction, or I could come up with other ways of educating them where they might not be able to engage with me online or in typical ways that businesses do transactions today. one of the ways that I pursued that was to become involved with a local farmers market and talk with hundreds and hundreds of people about the plant. I tell people I spent the last 3 years at the interface between the plant and the people. I was able to look someone in the eye and read underneath the questions they were asking me, and just give as much information as I possibly could to empower that individual to make a choice for themselves. This is not the kind of industry where you want to push products onto people. It really requires personal engagement to work with the plant to figure out what's best for specifically for an individual. And that requires learning more than you would normally learn when making a typical purchase.
Right. Well, you were on the ground floor, the grassroots efforts. It's very difficult when you bring a new product to market. First, you have to spend the time and the energy and the expense of your time to educate the market so that you can build a demand and you can build a proper understanding. So that's what you are doing. And that is the grind, my friend.
Absolutely. And again, though, to be fair, education was both a mission and a marketing strategy, because no one's going to buy anything, especially these products that tend to be more expensive, unless they understand what they're buying.
Correct. So we're going to get into your mission. I think that's a perfect segue to get into your mission now. You have a personal story. You are your own best advocate, your own best case study, if you will, with CBD. So tell us a little bit about how CBD has directly affected your life and altered it, and what makes you such a true believer for this particular product in the wellness section of really the natural food market.
Thank you for this question. Absolutely. In the very beginning of 2014, I suffered what is called a thyroid storm. My thyroid was basically overactive. It was an immune response to a lot of stress and a particular time in my life that I was going through a huge personal struggle with my family, and my body was taking the stress on, and it manifested through my immune system going haywire. I didn't know what was happening to me, but on a snowboarding weekend around the holidays, right before 2014, the end of 2013, I was woken up one night with what I thought was somebody banging on our hotel door. I woke my husband up and I'm like, there's somebody at the door, fix this. And he looked at me and he said, I don't hear anything. And it turns out it was the sound of my own heart just beating through my chest. And over the next several days, I lost 10 pounds. I was jittery. I didn't know what was happening. It wasn't a good time to go to the doctor's office because of the holidays, and I held out a little bit longer than I should have. But when I finally got it addressed, that's what I found out. It was a thyroid storm. Prior to this, I'd been diagnosed in the mid-2000s with celiac disease and Lyme disease. So both immunological disorders. And I just feel as if all the stress and all the pressure I was under caused my immune system, which was already taxed by these other things, to just overproduce. And I went to an endocrinologist who I've come to adore, a wonderful man in his early 70s. And we did what would be the typical protocol for something like that. I took medication to make sure that my heart wasn't racing, and also to suppress my thyroid from producing too much of the hormones. And I would get it under control, and then something would happen in my personal life. My stress would go through the roof. And as much as he, with a very well-intentioned advice, would ask me to eliminate stress from my life, it wasn't possible. And I would have these setbacks. And then finally he said, I think we're at the point where we're either going to need to do some surgery to take out your thyroid, or some radiation to stop your thyroid from producing hormones. And I know that people have been very successful with those two paths to deal with this. But at the time, I was convinced that I could figure out a way to do it more naturally. And I asked him for that opportunity. And I did two different things. One was I started in practicing yoga and meditation. And then the other thing was I started trying CBD. I was exposed at that point to CBD because I was working with an organization in upstate New York that was evaluating the potential of the hemp plant to revitalize the rural economy in some of the depressed areas in upstate New York. And I decided to take it. Now, you can't see me, but I'm using quotation marks here, therapeutically. I'm using that word specifically because I had only associated anything having to do with the cannabis plant with either recreation or medicine. And here was an opportunity for me to apply this plant and see if I could, make a change. And lo and behold, I started feeling better. And I had the benefit of looking at numbers on a lab test that proved that my thyroid hormones were going down. So it wasn't just me feeling better. It was actual proof that this was having an effect. In the beginning of this January, I had a follow-up appointment. And basically, my endocrinologist told me that I was completely in remission. And my numbers are well within healthy range. Of course, I saw the opportunity in taking what I've learned from the plant and turning it into a business. And I was particularly excited about that idea where I could take the business principles for which I had been spending years and years focused on and apply it to my own way of doing business. And so I went about creating a consulting practice that taught people about the plant, that curated those products based on certain standards. At the time, there weren't that many companies that were creating CBD products because, again, it was still a gray area. But that also meant that there wasn't any regulation in the industry. So it was really important that I did all of the vetting of those products so that I could feel confident and that my customers could feel confident that what they were doing was something healthy. And that's really how I took my business acumen, my journey with my health, and put it all together to jump right into an industry that I definitely won't look back from.
I love the fact that you are a walking, talking billboard for this product. You've got proof, you are proof, and I think that helps your customers and the people that you're educating feel a lot more comfortable with the actual leap to CBD because your firsthand knowledge, you're an example of what it can do to help you in the wellness industry.
And I appreciate that. There's one more aspect to my story that's not really my story, it's my son's story. And I do have some degree, I have permission from him to talk about it in some degree. And I'd like to just mention that my son, who's now 24, is in recovery from opiate addiction. And it is through this cannabis plant that he is successful in his recovery. And at the same time that I was going through what I was going through, and in part because of what he was going through, I became a huge advocate and supporter of looking to cannabis to help with not only addiction, but the underlying causes for why people go down that path to begin with, having to do with anxiety and pain that you suffer from, where you're just looking for relief. And anyone who's in this industry, or anyone who is in this industry for the right reasons, let's just say,
right,
takes advocacy as part of what they do. We need to, because it's not legal everywhere and it's not accessible, and there isn't social equity with this industry. There are so many things that need to be done, and there are legacies of people that have been involved with this plant for so long that were, because of the war on drugs, were told that they were doing something wrong and not healing. And now I am that mom that marches in the cannabis parade with a sign that says cannabis is an exit drug, because I know the power of this plant. And We are just reconnecting with this plant. This has been there for thousands of years. We are all just now coming back to it. And I just feel like part of that process, and I feel honored to be part of that process. And my reasons for being involved go very deep.
Well, if it can do some good, I'm all for it. I wish long ago, I had a mother that didn't take medicine. That was her own choice. But she was stricken with a terrible disease, Parkinson's. And after she passed, I watched a documentary on basically the health benefits for medical marijuana. I'm not a user, but once I saw the actual, within 20 minutes, the difference it made in the quality of someone's life and their capacity to get their muscles under control, I was sobbing at the documentary thinking, wow, rather than all the pharma that my mother was eventually took that didn't do anything but destroy her in so many other ways, I would have paid anything to give her CBD or anything of the like to help her with her symptoms and let her function normally. So never say never is what I basically say. I'm learning every day about this, and it's very interesting, all the data that they're coming up with. So can't wait to see where it is in 5-10 years.
Absolutely. And hearing your story, it saddens me as it does when I hear similar stories that the stigmatization and the misinformation around this plant prevented that type of relief that you described that you would have wanted for your mom.
Right. Because I just, like many others, I just assumed it was another drug, hemp, whatever it was all in a way an escape in order to get high. And it was another addiction that you had to deal with. So I'm educating myself on all of that and realizing that there's so much more to it. And that's only a little small factor. Yeah, it's interesting. It
is. And when you consider that drug education is typically done, the first opportunity that is provided in education for young people is typically taught by law enforcement. It should really be in a health class. But listen, that's how things were in this country. And that's a whole other topic of why it is how it is. But it is a leap to ask people to undo, or at least people from our generation and the one behind us, to undo all of those years of being told that there's something mostly bad about this plant, and then to come from that and have people gingerly, start to try it and accept it. And so often I would have people come up to me and bring their parents with them and say, can you please tell my mom or my dad about the hemp plant, about CBD, how it doesn't get you high, how it can address all these other things going on, and help me tell my parent that it's okay to try it. And not just an effort for them to take it, but they want their parents to take it. They want their parents to consider it.
Well, it's funny that you say that. So I was on a trip recently with several women that I didn't know. We were all of a certain age, and I'll call it midlife. And I was talking to everyone while we were waiting to take off. And I said, we were talking about, best products and best cosmetics and just kind of surfacey girl stuff, right? And I said, oh, by the way, the place that we're going, you can't bring, it's not legal. You can't bring any CBD or anything like that in. And we were having just a casual conversation. And 5 out of the 6 women that I mentioned this to in the airport, they quickly walked over to the trash can and started dumping things out of their purse. And I said, what are you guys doing? And they said, well, we all use some form of legal CBD before we go to sleep. And I just started laughing, thinking, okay, this is like this silent thing. Like it was hilarious to me in a way. It was hilarious. But I realized at that time that this is more mainstream. It's just not talked about. And of course, nobody was doing anything with THC in it. But it's kind of a new natural medicine, if you will, a sleep aid. Can you talk a little bit about that and a little bit about, the benefits for athletes and recovery for CBD? I know you're a snowboarder, so can you speak to that a little bit and why do people use this? Why is it effective? What's effective about it?
So I had mentioned when I was talking about the definition of CBD, cannabidiol, that it engaged with something called your endocannabinoid system. And your endocannabinoid system is basically a series of cell receptors throughout your body, in your nervous system, in your tissue, that are looking to bind with cannabinoids that serve as signaling molecules. And the goal of this system is to create balance or homeostasis in your body. We learn about homeostasis when we first learn about the fact that humans have 98.6 degree temperature. If we get too hot, we'll sweat. If we get too cold, we'll shiver, all in an effort to get us back to that homeostatic state. The endocannabinoid system works with all of the different mechanisms throughout your body that are a very careful but dynamic dance of equilibrium between more and less of something. More inflammation, less inflammation. Create more of this enzyme, break this enzyme down. So the reason why CBD seems to be a panacea and why cannabinoids are so heroic is that cannabinoids work with this endocannabinoid system in a way that we don't have to tell it what to do. It moves around and sends signals throughout based on what your body needs. Now, the reason why we have this incredible system set up in our bodies is because, and this information wasn't really discovered until the 1980s, early 1990s, is that our bodies actually create cannabinoids. So we create what are called endocannabinoids, endo meaning within, and a cannabinoid from a plant like cannabidiol or CBD is considered a phytocannabinoid. And when we're born, we are perfectly equipped to create these endocannabinoids. The most prevalent are 2-AG and anandamide. You might recognize the prefix ananda from yoga practice, means bliss, Sanskrit for bliss. And basically, as our body is looking for information as to how to regulate itself, it has these receptors. We create our own cannabinoids, which bind to the receptors and serve as a signaling mechanism to tell the cell to either produce more of something or break something down. Now, as we get older, or if we have a disease, a disorder, if our bodies are run down, or if we are working out really hard and breaking down muscle tissue and so that it can be built back up again, we deplete our bodies of our natural endocannabinoids. And what we have found is that taking a phytocannabinoid such as CBD can engage with this system. It's basically an adaptogen. It adapts to be able to give us what we need. And the areas in which the endocannabinoid system engages with us have to do with memory and sleep and our immune functions and our ability to create bliss, our mood, whether we're happy or sad. It's why it can be confusing that CBD is taken both for people who are looking to address depression as well as people that are looking to address anxiety. It's not about being something that's a sedative. It's not a sedative. It doesn't put you to sleep. What it will do, however, is help your body to modify pain, manage pain, and manage anxiety, which are two of the biggest reasons for us not sleeping. Leave aside pharmaceuticals for a second. We're talking about a plant that, based on the different strains or cultivars, can create and have certain effects that we're desiring. We are just scratching the surface of this plant. And I do want to say that, we're having this discussion, week 3, at least in New York, for isolation having to do with COVID-19. In a time of isolation where there's uncertainty and anxiety, this plant is like an alternative healthcare practice that can be taken in by an individual without having to go through the traditional medical system. And it empowers someone to take action, just like meditation or yoga or nutrition. Taking something like CBD is another way to self-heal and to self-regulate in a time when we don't want to overwhelm our healthcare system.
Well, that'll be interesting to see some more studies that come out, especially after this time. This is not going to be over in 3 weeks. I think we all know that this is going to be lingering on for months and months, if not a year. And I think all of us will be altering the way we interact, altering the way we think about our health, obviously being more careful. And maybe people will be looking into organic, alternate wellness benefits of different products outside of pharmaceuticals. I'm just guessing. But it's an interesting time to have CBD kind of in your toolbox to explore it a little bit more.
Absolutely. And I know, just going back to just the area of economics, from, where everything stemmed from for me, from a career perspective. When I was a student, I learned a lot about Adam Smith, who wrote, it's not called The Wealth of Nations, but it's what his book became known as, or what his writing became known as. And this was back in like the 1776 area. And he was really conceptualizing a free market economy. And it was one that he would argue, he was sort of arguing against the mercantilism of the time that basically associated wealth with, silver and gold and the king's treasury. And he was making the case that it's really the labor and the people and the land that will determine the wealth of a nation. And I think it brought this up for me because I'm sitting around thinking, money is not what people need right now. They need access to healthcare, ventilators, gloves, masks, plants, food. And the more that we can rely on ourselves to provide that for ourselves, the more that we are going to feel that we are individually prosperous and wealthy. And I just think there's going to be a focus on the elements of the new economy that make independent business ownership, localism, alternative healthcare, alternative transportation, a way of looking at manufacturing that's additive and not extractive or destructive. There are so many great things that could come from this. And I like to focus on that when I'm trying to make myself feel better.
Well, it's a good way to look at things. I was talking to someone the other day saying that I think that the bartering system might just make a comeback given what's going on in the economy in the next 6 months. But that's just me.
For the record, I think you're right. I think that local currencies and bartering and there's something called the transition movement, something for people to go and explore, sort of a different way of going about our local economies.
Right. It's very interesting. Well, this has been fascinating. I know that there are volumes and lecture upon lecture about CBD that you can share with us. So tell me, where can people find out a little bit more if they want to purchase your products, find out where to attend a lecture? I know that you're a great speaker and you've got some other opportunities and platforms. Where can we find you?
Thank you. So my company is called Hemp Humanity, and we're at hempandhumanity.com. If you are interested in a consultation or in purchasing a product, you can send me an email at melissa@hempandhumanity.com. If anyone, mentions this interview, I'm happy to do a complimentary 20-minute consultation around CBD. I'm happy to do that for your listeners, your audience. And I really appreciate that opportunity to be a part of what you're doing, Heather. It's so wonderful.
Well, thank you for that. I'm really happy that you joined us. And we will tune back in with you in another 6 to 8 months just to find out where cannabis and where CBD has come from the interview point now. So thank you so much, Melissa.
Thanks, Heather. I look forward to seeing you soon, I hope.
Yes, we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
That's all for this week. Thank you for listening to the Mentors and Moguls podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a minute to rate and review the Mentors and Moguls podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find bonus video episodes at mentorsandmogulspodcast.com or check out our events page and our blog at heatherrstone.com. Until next time, make it a great day.